There are tons of videos out now about how to shoot cool B-roll sequences, but there's one thing that no one is telling you that you absolutely have to do for good B-roll. Hey everyone, Camber here, showing you how to use your camera to make good videos. So if you're new, consider subscribing and also joining my private Facebook group where I can better answer your filmmaking questions. But ever since Canadian Peter made his video on the importance of B-roll a few years back, there have been tons of people following suit and making videos on how to shoot elaborate B-roll. That's cool and all, and I've seen people make some really impressive sequences, but it seems like there's been a shift in thinking that making all these fancy in-camera transitions with speed ramps and lots of slow motion is the definition of B-roll and will automatically make your video good. Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's great to make these sequences to practice those different types of transitions to improve your skills, and I even made a short film to practice using various transitions that fit into the context of the story. But for the most part, these types of fancy B-roll sequences, as they're so often called, don't really fit into narrative filmmaking. So then, where do they fit? More in the realm of commercial video and product advertising. For example, Daniel Schiffer does a lot of product videos for companies, and he shows you these impressive, elaborate sequences that he makes. And it makes a lot of sense because you want to be flashy and catch people's attention for a short amount of time with these product videos. But the one thing that no one is telling you is that it's not actually B-roll in most cases. Because you have to ask yourself, if the whole video sequence is focused around a product or someone making coffee or doing whatever, and that's the whole video, is it really B-roll, or is it just fancy transitions and camera movements that make your A-roll video look really cool? It's up for debate, so let me know what you think down in the comments. Because the definition of B-roll is footage that supplements your primary story. And I have another video that you can check out here about what A-roll and B-roll actually is that'll clarify it more for you. But you first have to have the A-roll sequence so that you can then have the cutaway shots, which are your B-roll. But everyone keeps calling these sequences B-roll because people now associate short sequences with elaborate camera moves and transitions with B-roll, and it gets a lot of views even though it's not actually B-roll. And when you watch movies, you probably aren't going to see many of these sequences that everyone calls B-roll now. Instead, what you're more likely to see are some subtle transitions between scenes every so often that might make you think, whoa, that was cool. But the key is that they're not used all at once. They're typically used quite sparingly so that they're not overdone. But I do like how Swedish Peter makes a story out of his, like in his office B-roll video, where the guy comes into the office bored and we find out at the end that all the stuff he did was actually while he was daydreaming. And I could see where this could actually be used in something like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where it causes him to lose his job because he wrote "I quit" without even realizing it. But even in this case, you could debate if it's actually B-roll because it's part of what the main character is doing in the story. On the other hand, I can't really see any of these minute-long coffee B-roll sequences that people keep making actually being used in the film because the audience would get bored. Now that's not to say don't practice these types of sequences and improving in your cinematography and editing skills, because it's actually a great way to get you thinking about the edit before you start filming. But it's more so to say that making these types of standalone sequences isn't actually B-roll. It's simply making more interesting camera moves and transitions to make a more interesting A-roll story. Now please don't start saying down in the comments that I'm hating on Canadian Peter or Swedish Peter or Schiffer or anyone else who makes these types of sequences. I think they all do really impressive work and I've learned a lot from each one of them. I just wanted to point out that it's not actually B-roll in most cases because with it being a standalone sequence that actually makes it A-roll. You'd have to have your A-roll story to then have the cutaway to those shots to make them B-roll. And if these are the types of sequences you do want to make, then you're probably better off on the commercial filmmaking route rather than with narrative filmmaking. But if you found this video enlightening, then please help me out by leaving a like, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you soon.